Hi, it's Ryan from Straight Ahead Samples. I have a fun arrangement for you today. I'm using Dorico with Atomic Big Band, and I'll share some tips and tricks I use to get more realistic playback demos. For setup instructions and details about the playback template, watch these other videos which will show you everything you need to know to get going. Now for the song itself, I was more inspired by the way jazz musicians would play popular tunes of the day and reimagine them in their style. Particularly the way one of my favorite records, Basie's Beatle Bag, made the Beatles tunes swing by re-rhythmicizing the melody and thickening the harmony. I wanted to do something that was very new and probably unexpected, so I landed on this song, which was one of the biggest hits of 2024, Good Luck Babe by Chappell Roan. I'll hit play and talk you through some of the things I did section by section. Okay, so for the intro, we have 8 bars of just rhythm section. I'm using the real piano. I have the JB145 guitar, straight ahead jazz bass. I'm using the built-in Groove Agent drums from Steinberg, and I added a vibraphone, which is just using the built-in Hallian player. Now, instead of just doing the chords for the 8 bars, I took that melodic motif from the chorus and just harmonized it jazz style in the piano and doubled it in the vibes. And then we have the Light as a Flutist up top and the lead trumpet from Atomic Big Band playing the melody here in unison. I chose harmon mute stem out just to give it a little bit more of a quirky, unexpected sound than just a harmon mute or a straight mute. And one of the things you may notice right away is that I have written out all of the rhythm section parts, which I think is really important if you're going to rely on playback to show others how the tune goes. Normally, I would not write out a guitar part note per note. I would probably just switch all of this to slashes with chords, but for playback, it really helps. And for that Freddie Green style, you just want to have 2 or 3 notes playing guide tone lines. And I do have a special expression map I created for the JB145 for Atomic Big Band that is not available publicly yet. But if you own Atomic Big Band and JB145 and would like to have guitar play in this style on this chart, please contact us at straightaheadsamples.com and I will send you the expression map for the JB145, which helps the staccatos and marcatos and some of the other things really work to bring it to life, because I think that guitar in this style is really important. Okay, then we have the plunger mute coming in, and I chose plunger mute in trombones because I wanted to open it really quickly on the last note, and that is one of the mutes that, of course, you can open and close really quickly because it crescendos. And then we have some forte piano crescendo hidden playback techniques over these. Watch that other video I mentioned to learn how to apply them. And let's hear coming out of this first verse going into the chorus. All right, nice. Now, before we go into that second verse, you'll notice some of the things that really make it come to life is using the drums, and I'm writing in the snare part to really catch a lot of those hits that the brass is doing. And I've got the vibes doubling the flute and the lead trumpet. And one of the unique things about Atomic Big Band is that when you write 4 trombones or trumpets or saxophones in unison, you're actually getting the sound of 4 trombones playing, not just the same exact instrument doubled. So that actually sounds like 4 trombones. And you'll notice all the dynamics and crescendos I've written in, that really helps bring it to life as well. And when you start to pay attention to the dynamics and mix with those rather than the faders, you'll find that you end up writing in more like the number of dynamics that are actually needed for live players to play, as sometimes we overlook those, and playback really helps us shine light on those. And you've seen that I've written in some of these playback techniques. I put a lot of forte piano crescendos and forte pianos in just for playback that I think the players, live players themselves, would naturally put in. So I don't want to over mark up the score. I want to leave some room for what live players would do with it, but I do want to put these inflections in for playback. So let's go ahead and end off this first chorus here. And it looks like I've got the trombones in 4-part harmony taking over the second verse with some little piano and vibe fills. Nice little change in the drum groove, just a little bit for this part. Here's the pre-chorus. Second chorus. Alright, now instead of just playing the second chorus of second half of the second chorus the same, thought it was a good opportunity to bring the dynamic down, put a little improvisation in with the flute solo. So once again, for playback, instead of just writing slashes and chords like I would for a live player, I went ahead and wrote out a solo. And I wrote in a decrescendo in the drums. Looks like I have 2 dynamic marks there. I don't need both of those. Bring it down to a hi-hat. I wrote in the actual open and close, which really helps bring the playback to life. Now, I would probably just put slash marks in once I print this for live players, but going that extra mile for playback just feels really good for me, and I find it really inspiring, especially if you are going to share this with others. I kind of like this little reharmonization I did, little tritone substitution there, and then starting the time on beat 2 of the chorus. This felt more interesting. I still have the guitar here written out, which would be slash marks once we print it out for live players. Some octave saxophone runs, but notice I haven't put any full 13-horn tutti things in yet. We're still saving that, because after we have this flute solo, it goes to an abbreviated version of the bridge. Let's check that out. Down to just piano and vibes. Builds a little bit of tension. Now, key change. This is not in the original, but instrumentally, we need to provide some more interest. Snares kicking all those brass hits. Okay, so there we have that chorus, and then I did a tag ending. Before we get to that, let's talk about what's going on here. You may have heard the saxophones are playing this counterline in octaves, and this is a direct quote from a jazz standard. If you recognize what it is, write it in the comments below. It started off as just the first few notes, and I was trying to come up with a different phrase, but I just kept hearing the rest of that melody, and I said, you know what, it's only 8 measures or so. It'd be a nice nod to the jazz tradition to quote a jazz standard in there. Now you hear coming out of this piano interlude and the key change, one of the things that really brought it to life for me was this long drum build. Once again, writing in these drum fills, I would probably put slash marks and just write the word fill and crescendo for a live player, but for playback, really writing it in is really important. And they got these shakes in the brass, which is really nice. Some more forte piano crescendos written in that just for playback, not for live players. Got a doit here. and then these chromatic octave runs. And then you notice I did a 2-5 and then up a half step, 2-5. These are all jazz alterations, not in the original, of course. The original just goes 2-5-1-6 or 4-5-1-6 the whole time, but some liberties were taken throughout that. So let's bring it down. Let's hear this big shout chorus one more time coming out of the key change. Listen to how the drums really set it up. Balls and scoops in the middle of the phrase of that sax solo. And bring it down a notch. It's just kind of a long tag. Scoop. Big finish. Now you notice the gliss runs feature used right here. Watch the other video to see how to do that, but I used some of the default gliss markings and then in the properties pane disabled them and added our own glisses, but not on every single instrument, just on a few, because it sounds a little overkill sometimes when everyone's doing it, but definitely in the lead trumpet and a few others. And then I have the forte piano crescendo diminuendo on most of the brass. Didn't put it on the lead trumpet, just wanted that to hold strong. And the forte piano, I like to blend those two articulations so not everyone is doing the exact same thing. You want to avoid that accordion effect. And then just had fun writing in the drum part. I would change that if it were for a real player. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and play it all the way through.